All right. All right. All right. All right. Hi, everyone. Whoo! Can you guys believe it? We're wrapping up our summer tax series. This has been incredible. For everyone who's been joining us for every session, watching reruns, I just want to say mighty thank you for sticking it out with me throughout this summer. I am Dr. Lilly Mbinglo. I am a licensed CPA based in Virginia, serving clients all over the US, all over the world. And there's so much I could say about myself, right? I am an entrepreneur. Of course, I own my own firm. I am an accounting professor at Regent University, an author. If you haven't gotten any of my books, I don't know what's holding you back, but we'll talk about it, okay? And a speaker, and of course, of everything I love to do, teaching is near and dear to my heart, like to the core of who I am. So I just want to let you guys know, if you're watching this, if you want me to ever come and educate your group on any specific topic relating to taxes, feel free to reach out to us. Email us. Our information is always going to be here, info@NPS, and we're more than happy to put something together, be it in person or via Zoom. I'm happy to definitely do that. If you guys have questions, whether you're a nonprofit, a group of business owners, or just, even families, right? I want to make sure that I put that out there as we're wrapping up this summer tax series. So this series has been focused on providing strategies. We've covered so many different things. In fact, I'm going to make sure I list all the topics we went over with the links so you guys can go back and watch if you missed any of them. Okay. We're wrapping up today with my favorite topic, nonprofit. If you've known me, you know when I came into business, I initially wanted to be the CPA for nonprofits because I've always been captivated, and I've always been just taken aback and in awe of people that, put in the work to create nonprofit organizations so that they can serve others or they can do something bigger than themselves. And, getting to understand what it takes to actually set one up, to grow it, to sustain it, is not for the faint of heart. And that's why, I always wanted to be that CPA that nonprofits can come to. Of course, you want to come to the arc, right? Where we can make sure that what you have is protected, preserved, and help you grow it. But as God will have it, I happen to be one of those very versatile CPAs where I'm just as good with the business side of things, and our clientele grew, more of business owners, independent contractors, and of course, individuals too. We still serve nonprofits. But I wanted today's session to close out for the people that are that have been thinking about setting up nonprofit organizations, or people that are already running one, they already set one up, and maybe need the tools to be able to sustain it. Okay. So I'm going to break this presentation today into three parts. My first part is going to be what it takes to start. All right. And the biggest thing for me when I'm thinking about what it takes to start is it even right for you? Because a lot of people have set up nonprofit organizations and they had no idea what it took to run one. Then the second part, we're going to talk about what it takes to grow, right? Because what it takes to start is not what it takes to grow. Starting has to do with clarifying the fact that you want to do this, and then of course paperwork for compliance. But growing is where you need to have sustainable funding sources, because this is not a business, this is a different ball game, and we're talking about that, right? And then now we have sustaining the organization itself. This is where we take it to a next level of leadership. But we'll go ahead and we'll start with, the starting up a nonprofit. What does that even entail? So before anyone, registers a nonprofit, when they come to me and they're like, I have this nonprofit that I want to set up, is very near and dear to my heart, I have a couple of questions that I always want you to answer, because a nonprofit is not right for everybody. It's okay to have good intentions. It's okay to have a passion to want to serve people. But are you sure a nonprofit organization as an entity structure is the best way to go around it? Because it takes so much work and even compliance, because you're an organization that the public trusts. And so if we don't set you up right, if we don't, oh my God, this is wild to remember. If we don't set you up right, or if your mission is not well clarified, you can get in trouble. Okay. This is crazy. My team member is calling me. I hope everything is good on here. I don't know why he's calling me when I'm live. So I think we're good. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. For someone who has been thinking about setting up a nonprofit organization, someone who has been contemplating, if you're taking notes, I really want you to write down these 10 questions, okay? Because having good ideas and actually going through with it is a different thing, okay? I'll explain how nonprofits go as we talk, as I go over these 10 questions, but I want you to really think it through so that nobody convinces you to just rush and set up a nonprofit just because they tell you, oh, you can save on taxes. That's not always the case. Yes, to an extent, but that's not always the case, okay? So the first thing, if you're thinking about setting up a nonprofit, before you get into registering your entity, I want to ask you, what is really the problem that you want to solve? Okay, because it's if you sit and you tell me, oh, you know what, I want to help, let's say I want to help kids that are born with a specific developmental issue. That's a great problem you want to solve, right? But how do you want to solve this problem for them? Okay, maybe you're not a medical practitioner. How do you want to go around about it? And why does it have to be a nonprofit that you have to use to do that? Now, a nonprofit is great because other people can give you money to be able to solve these problems. But do you really have what's really that specific problem you want to solve, right? Who are the people that are affected by this? And you want to also think about the fact that is there evidence that supports the fact that these people are not already supported, right? Because sometimes we're going to reinvent the wheel for something that is working instead of wanting to partner with someone who is already doing it. So the first thing is this problem I want to solve, right? Is there a real problem? And can I clearly define this problem and the people that will be impacted? The second question I want you to ask yourself is the nonprofit the only vehicle? And I kind of mentioned that already. That means, could I set up a business and use my money to give to other organizations that can do what is already happening? Can I just make donations? Because when you set up a nonprofit organization, remember I said you're a public entity, right? An entity that has to earn the trust of the public. Will you be able to keep up with everything that it entails to run this organization, right? Or can I just make donations to somebody who is already doing it? Right. And this kind of takes me to my third question, which is, can I partner with other people that are doing it? There are churches that are probably doing what you're doing. There are probably other nonprofits doing what you're doing. I know we all like the hero syndrome, like I started this, I'm doing this, and then we get overwhelmed because we realize there's a lot of work. We were not ready for it. Okay. So first thing I want you to talk about, is there a real problem, right? Who are the people that are going to benefit? And second, is a nonprofit the only vehicle that I can use to solve this problem? Third, can I partner with other people to be able to do this instead of me wanting to reinvent the wheel? Fourth thing I want you to ask yourself, and this is very important, is am I willing to give up personal ownership? Now, I want to explain how nonprofits work, and then we'll continue with this fourth question, right? When you set up a nonprofit organization, what you're usually doing is you're saying, I'm setting up an organization that is not meant to benefit me or any person specifically financially. It is meant to provide a good, or a service, something charitable, educational, religious, something that is going to impact the lives of other people, but I don't necessarily have to benefit from it personally. Okay, that doesn't mean you cannot be paid for your time or other people cannot be paid for providing a service, but you're not going into it thinking if there's a profit, I'm going to take it and put it in my pocket. It doesn't work like that. All right. And because a nonprofit is set that way to be able to serve other people, the IRS allows you to be able to get donations from other people in order to pursue this mission of yours that is beyond you. It's not a selfish mission. You're able to pursue this mission using other people's money, and you don't have to pay taxes on the money that they give you, and they themselves get a tax break for supporting your mission. Okay. So now when you set up a nonprofit, what's the first thing in that? You do not own it. You are a founder, not an owner. So if you hear a nonprofit person say, I own a nonprofit, you founded a nonprofit. And that's why if you set up a nonprofit organization and you change the mission all by yourself without the board approving, the board can kick you off that nonprofit, even though you founded it, because nobody owns a nonprofit. The moment you set up that organization and saying it's supposed to pursue a mission that is bigger than yourself, a board of directors is usually put in place to ensure the governance of that organization, to make sure that the organization is doing what it says it's supposed to do, to make sure that the money that is given to the organization is being stewarded right, to ensure that the mission is at the forefront of that organization. And guess what? If you were to ever shut down that nonprofit, you don't get to keep that money. You give it to another nonprofit. All right. So let's come back to my question number 4. Are you willing to give up ownership? Are you willing to be okay to step aside and let other people make decisions for your organization? Because that's very, very important. And I think that's where a lot of founders have found themselves stuck. I remember one time a lady came to me, can I set my bylaws where nobody can vote me off the board? No, you can't. So long as you pursue the mission and you're in line with the mission, you're good. But if you decide to make decisions as if it's your personal business, unfortunately, no, you can be voted off. We can't do that, right? Because the moment you say you're a public charity, guess what? The public counts on you and your board members to make decisions that put the mission at the forefront. And if you are not aligned with that, they can kick you off. So when I'm talking to nonprofit founders or people thinking, I want you to ask yourself, can I give up ownership? Can I give up control? Can I give up the fact that I don't get to get the proceeds to myself? There's no profit that you're taking home. If you're okay with knowing that I'm setting up something to serve other people, then that might be for you. Otherwise, you can still set up your business where you have all ownership and then you take your profits and you help people. All right. That's question number 4. Let me make sure I go to question number 5. I have my notes for you guys because we cannot miss anything. All right. Now, the question number 5 I have for you is, do you have the right people around you? I've seen people set up nonprofit organizations kind of to want to prove a point to people. And you never want to find yourself in that situation where maybe you're in a circle of people because they're doing it, you're doing it. No. Are you around the right people? People that will support your mission, not people that you feel like you're competing with. And why am I saying that? When many founders start nonprofit organizations, they bring on, maybe sometimes they bring their friends, right? And they're like, oh, we're kind of cool. But they don't realize that it's a lot of work. This is not something you can do with your friends. This is not something you're doing because you want to prove a point to anybody. It's not a business that you're like, I'm going to succeed. No, there's so much work. And if you don't have the right support system, it's going to be a struggle for you to thrive. So you definitely want to put that at the forefront of your mind. All right. My next question for you now is there a realistic funding plan? Oh, I wish I could save $1 for every time somebody tells me I didn't realize I would be spending all of my own money on a nonprofit because there was no plan. There was no plan. They went in without having a plan of how they were going to fund that organization. Let me tell you guys something, okay? Nonprofits are funded by the donations from the public, sometimes grants. If you're able to qualify, you could get some sponsorships. You could actually provide goods and services that are kind of in line with your mission. And if they are not, they'll be reported as unrelated business income. There are different ways you can fund a nonprofit, but you need to have a plan. What happens when most founders register a nonprofit is they are spending their own money, which is okay at the start, because you can treat it as a loan to the organization since a nonprofit is a separate entity from you, or it could be your own donation. But that's not a sustainable plan, because if you want to make a difference, if you want to build an organization that is going to outlive itself, you cannot run on just your money unless you're Bill Gates and then you can set up a foundation that gives money to other people. But if you're trying to do good, you're trying to serve people, it's actually in your best interest to have a funding plan in place so that you can serve more people, more families, and impact so many more lives. Instead of you going in without a plan, just winging it with your own personal money, and then you get frustrated when the needs are increasing and you cannot meet the needs. Okay. Now, what does that come with? Part of what comes with having a funding plan is knowing the sources that you're going to reach out to, making sure that you have donors and you're able to manage those donor conversations and relationships, right? Making sure that you're prepared to be telling the story of your organization. Because if you do not have a funding plan, you're going to be in trouble big time. Okay. And that goes to my next one, which I think this is my number 7, which is, can you fundraise? There are a lot of people that don't like talking about money. There are a lot of people who don't like to beg. If you're a proud person, please don't set up a nonprofit, because you become what? You become an official beggar. Let me tell you, you're literally dependent on other people to follow your mission. Because if you don't have a plan, you need to know how to fundraise. And if you don't have the courage to go and ask people for money, you're going to be in trouble. Now, fundraising doesn't mean you have to be a professional beggar, right? But there are ways you can do it where you can create such accountability. You can continuously update people of what you're doing, where when it comes to asking people to support you, it's not hard, right? But there's always going to be the need for you to ask, because if you don't ask, people don't know that they need to support you. So you, as someone who is thinking of starting a nonprofit, just make peace with the fact that you're going to need to ask people for money. Can you fundraise? Can you talk to people? Can you go and beg? Period, right? I know I've seen a lot of people who have nonprofit organizations, and sometimes I will see people on social media making comments, derogatory comments like, don't start a nonprofit if you don't have money, because you keep coming to our inboxes and begging. Well, that's that's what happens when you don't have a solid plan. But that's just the way nonprofits run. They're dependent on the kindness of their donors, right? So if you're setting up a nonprofit, I need you to keep that in mind. If you're a proud person, don't do it. Don't do it, because if you're proud and you don't know how to beg, okay. But what I'm trying to say is you should be practicing how to fundraise, because when you set up your organization, you're going to need other people to support what you're building. Otherwise, you will feel so frustrated after you've depleted your own funds that is going to kill your passion, and you're not going to want to pursue it. Okay. And that's what I'm trying to help you avoid. The eighth question I want you to ask yourself is, can we measure your impact? It's not enough that you say, I want to make a difference in the lives of X, Y, and Z. But can we measure the impact? Can we actually go and say, okay, these were the number of people that you impacted? A lot of times you see people refusing to give to nonprofits because there's no concrete measurement of the kind of impact or the difference they are making. Can you tell people, I was able to serve, we talked about kids with a certain developmental issues, you were able to serve maybe 20 families, you provided mentoring, you provided counseling, or you provided support in terms of certain needs that they have. Can we have measurable impact? And can some of these people actually say that you did these things that you said that you did? So if we're not able to measure your impact, there's a likelihood that you're not going to be able to sustain and build a successful organization. And that's what I want you to think about. All right. 9 question. Oh, I have to keep going because I need to get out of this. I have 1 minute to focus on this. My next question for you is, are you ready for the administrative work that comes with it? Now, when you set up an organization at the very beginning, you're going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Okay. Even though you may have a board of directors, most time new organizations, their board members are what we call founding board members, people that are helping you start the organization. Many of them might not know what it even takes to run an organization unless you bring people like me, someone like me who trains nonprofit boards to come and really break down what their duties, what their responsibilities, and things that they're supposed to be doing. But most founding board members are just there to help you set up your nonprofit. They don't really know what's happening. So you have to make sure that you take on that responsibility of accountability, of bookkeeping, of reporting, of tracking everything that's coming in. That's a lot of work. And if you're someone who has a full-time job, has a family, it can be so much that it will leave you feeling like, is it even worth it? And so I want you to start asking yourself that question. Do I have the bandwidth before you go registering an organization? All right. And then my last one is, how prepared am I for long term? Which means, is this something that I can set up and be okay to walk away from? If you know that you're setting up something that's going to be my baby, let it go, okay? Because you're going to get so attached, you might even stand in the way of the organization growing. If you want to see successful organizations, the first few years, yes, you're going to have the founder heavily involved. But in order to grow and sustain the organization, you're going to need to be able to step aside and have change in leadership. That's where you know that you're ready for your organization to be able to grow and sustain itself. So now, if you answer these 10 questions and you feel like, you know what, I don't need to partner with somebody else. I don't need to be so consumed about funding because I know what I'm going to be able to do. I have a plan. If you feel like all these things are in place and you really believe that your mission is worth, being put in a structured format where lives can be impacted, then come on board, because it's time for you to set up your nonprofit organization. Let me start with that. All right. So what is a nonprofit organization? It's an organization that has been set up to serve the public, the public, or a group of people, and there's no intention for someone to personally benefit from the proceeds of that organization. And at the end of the day, this organization is not set up to make money per se. Yes, they could have profits, but they are not set up to make money. Does that make sense? So when they say something is not for profit, right, it means we're going to set up an organization, we're going to have money coming in to support our mission, but we're personally not going out there just pursuing money for the sake of profit so we can take something back home. Okay? This is all focused on the mission. So now when you have finally, decided that this is what you want to do, and you say, okay, I have defined what problem I want to solve, I've defined who I want to serve, I've defined how I'm going to go about serving them, and then we can put together that very beautiful mission statement about who we are, who we're serving, how we're going about it. Then we move now to the first part of this, which is getting registered at the state level. Okay. So once you've defined all these things I talked about, we'll go to the first part, which is getting registered at the state level. So when you go to the state level to register, you would register generally as a corporation. Now, a nonprofit can be a trust as well, but most nonprofits would register as a non-stock corporation if the state offers the non-stock option. Otherwise, you would register as a corporation. All right. So a corporation is an entity structure that stands on its own to pursue a mission. But when you just register as a corporation, you're still pretty much set up for profit, even though you're a nonprofit. But a corporation is generally set to operate for what? For profit. All right. So in order for you to be treated as a tax exempt organization where you don't pay taxes on your proceeds, you actually go through the second step of applying with the IRS to become tax exempt. So you would file a form called 1023 easy. If you can do the easy if you don't have a lot going on, or you can just do a full 1023 if you're a hospital, a school, or a church that also an organization that has a lot of assets worth over 500,000 or cash worth over 50,000. Then you should be ready, right? 250,000 of assets and then 50,000 in cash. So if you have those, you have to do the full 1023. Now, there are certain things the IRS will require from you before you get this started. We already talked about your mission statement. Next thing is you do want to have a board, right? Most states, by the time you register at the board level, at the state, to incorporate yourself at the state, they would require you to have your board of directors. Other states, one person is fine, but at the IRS you must have a minimum of 3 people, and you must have officers, so at least a president, a treasurer, maybe VP, but that's the minimum the IRS would generally require. So it's better to just have that by the time you're going to incorporate at the state level. Okay, so you incorporate at the state level, you're a corporation, how you filed your articles of incorporation. However, for you to be tax exempt, you have to go through the IRS and apply to be tax exempt. When the IRS approves of you, they'll send you something called a determination letter. That determination letter is like that's your winning ticket right there. Okay, even though it's still at the preliminary stages, but that tells you that for every money that comes to your organization, whatever is left, your organization doesn't have to pay taxes. But because the IRS has granted you this privilege to not have to pay taxes on your proceeds, they have their own requirements. And one of them is that you have to keep accurate financial records. Okay, you have to stay constantly compliant with your filings. The IRS requires you to file your annual taxes every single year. There are different types of taxes you need to file, and I'm going to come to that in the next part. Okay, so but you need to make sure you're filing your taxes every year. The IRS requires a certain level of transparency based on the level at which your organization finds itself. So the more money you bring in, the more detail they want to see. And when you go past a certain threshold of income, you actually need to do have audits performed, so that way they ensure that the money that you're getting from the public is being stewarded correctly. Okay, stewarded, but you get the idea. All right, now we got that one down pat. But what are some things you have to do at the state level? You've gotten your determination letter from the IRS. Does that mean you just go and you start to operate? yes, you can start. But if you're going to fundraise at your state level, you want to make sure that you apply for charitable solicitation. This is what will allow you to be able to raise funds at your state level without getting into trouble. So people did not know that, if you start to fundraise in your state, the state can actually ask you to pay taxes on that fund. So you need to apply for charitable solicitation, which gives you permission to be able to raise funding in that state. So I'll advise you, once the IRS approves for you to get this done, also get your state exemption done. Different states have different rules, but you want to go ahead and get your exemption at the state level so that you can get breaks from things like property taxes and all the different kinds of local taxes that you will normally pay if you were a business. As a nonprofit, that will be exempt for you. All right. So I think we kind of got the down pack as far as getting to the launching part. Once we've clarified that the nonprofit, after you've answered those 10 questions I gave, and you know the nonprofit is right for you, you create a very beautiful mission statement. You incorporate at the state level. Of course, make sure you have a board of directors. Once you've incorporated at the state level, you take it to the IRS and you request to be tax exempt. Remember that if you incorporate at the state level, but you don't go through the IRS process, guess what? You're supposed to pay your 21% taxes on your proceeds. I know a lot of people do not know that, but the fact that you incorporated at the state does not, even though you're a non-profit, does not mean the IRS has recognized you. And the IRS is what? The taxing authority. So you need to make sure that you go through the IRS process before you continue. Are there organizations that don't need to do this? Yes, churches don't need to. Churches, hospitals, schools, they do get automatic exemptions. I know a lot of you don't know that, but that's for a topic for another day. And this is something that you can always take advantage of, the 15 minutes, free 15-minute consult I do, so I can give you guidance. All right. So we've completed now with our launching. The next thing we're going to dive into is what? Growing the organization. All right. For those that have already set up an organization, I hear you guys. The number of you that come to me sometimes just feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, whew, my heart goes out to you, because I know it's so hard to secure funding. First of all, it's very limited resources to go around. So even when there are grants, it's like a ton of people applying for these grants, right? And so if you don't have a lot going on to help yourself stand out, it becomes really difficult. Before I go to growing, let's go back. See, that's why you guys should not let me go without my notes. Look at my notes here. You're just letting me go like that. So, sorry. See, I flipped the wrong page. My notes are here. Here's the thing. So, two things I forgot to mention. When you incorporate at the state level, you're supposed to get your EIN number. So please get your EIN number, your employer identification number, before you apply for your exemption with the IRS. I forgot to mention that, because you're going to need that to open your bank account. Okay. And another thing I also forgot to mention is make sure that you work on your bylaws. I know I said that earlier about a founder who is trying to ask us to make the bylaws where they can kick her off, but you want to make sure that you work on your bylaws with your board of directors, because your bylaws are your governing document. So your board of directors is your governing authority, and then the bylaws are the governing document for the board of directors, which is very important because every decision will be made based on what you have on your bylaws. So if your bylaws is saying this is what we approve, or this is what we agree on, this is what a quorum is. A quorum is, how many people might need to make a decision on something. That's what you're always going to observe. So yes, you want to make sure of that. Okay. Lily, stick with your notes. You guys don't let me keep going and just bypassing. You understand? I put my notes right here because I just keep going. I get excited. Don't do that to me, y'all. Please hold me down. Say, please slow down. All right. So once we're done with the setting up, the launching, the next part we're going to go into now is the growing. Okay. So there are two major things I want you to think about if you're someone who has set up a nonprofit and you feel stuck. You feel like you're not moving. You feel like, you're just struggling to get back. Two things, okay? So when we come to growing, I want you to focus on two things. Building a business model, building a funding model. Funding model, right? Where you can really determine who you want to seek funding from and how you want to go about it. Okay. This one is not it's not just something to just sit and say we're going to do this. No, I want you to take your time and go down in detail, as in who are we going to be seeking funding from? Right, you want to define your funding streams. If it's individual donors, if you plan to seek monthly donations, if you plan to do grants, what would that entail in order to pursue grants, right? If you want to do corporate sponsorships, even corporate donations, right? If you want to do events, fundraising events, if you want to work with churches, you want to partner with other organizations, kind of like when people do things like back to school drive. I'm always wondering, why do we need to have 50 back to school drive? Partner with other people, and then you guys bring resources together and you serve a bigger group, right? So you could have partnerships, you could have situations where you work with people and you can get when you talk about like major gifts, maybe you might have someone who knows people that like to give to nonprofits, where you can work something with them, and they can pitch for you and you can get major gifts. Or even just like whatever it is, you have your list of funding options or your streams, okay? And then you put together a detailed plan of how you're going to pursue this. I'll tell you, most of the people I always see struggling, when I ask them, like, who are the people you plan to seek funding from? Well, individual donors, we post it on social media and all of that, but that's not enough. You need to have a plan. You need to have a strategic plan of how you're going to captivate the individual donors. If you want to work with corporations, what's the plan? How do you approach them? Who in these different corporations are you making contacts with to pitch about your organization? Right. So my first thing for you is having that funding model in place. You list out all your funding streams, all the people that you want to leverage. Maybe you might decide that you want to offer a service, right? It could be that your nonprofit helps to do. I've seen situations where there's like a nonprofit where the guy like cuts hair for people who are homeless. You could still offer hair cutting services for people to pay at a low fee to use that money to fund your organization. What I mean is your organization can still be able to charge for certain services or even sell products, right, that are in line to help to fund your organization. But those are the plans that you want to have. So when you're in that place where you're struggling to grow, a lot of times your biggest issue is funding. And if you do not have this solid funding in place of who you want to go after, you're going to struggle. Now, having your funding plan is one, but the biggest thing you have to work on is your budget. You see, the most difficult thing you can do is go approach a person and say, I need money, but you haven't put together a plan for how that money is going to be spent. Okay. So we've said you have to put your funding plan first because you want to decide how you're going to strategically go after these people. But the next thing you want to really have is what is a full budget of the things you want to be able to do, right? The programs that you want to pursue, the people you want to help, what is going to cost you to help these people, how many people you're going to need to be able to provide this help, what is going to take in order to provide this. All right. So there's what we call functional budget, where you do it by activity. All right. So here we are, figure out how you're going to go look for your money, but you want to put what your programs will cost you, right? Because your programs are the things that are core to your mission. If you say we want to provide backpacks to kids with those particular groups of kids that we talked about, or maybe you can say kids from single parent homes, right? Now, in that program, how many backpacks are we going to need? What's it going to cost us to get these backpacks? What's going to be in the backpacks, right? Are we going to need people to be able to distribute that? Are we going to need some help? Are we going to need to hire professional people where, in addition to providing backpacks, we're doing mentoring for those families, or whatever you want to put together? That's kind of all the expenses that you would incur for your programs. But then the next thing is also, if you're going to seek funding after you've put together your streams of funding, if you're going to do fundraising and all of that, what would that cost you, right? And then of course the last part is going to be your administrative expenses. You always want to break this down, because if someone approaches you and say, okay, I see you guys say you're looking for $10,000, this is your corporate sponsor, corporate donor, what do you want to do with it? Then you can go, we are planning to support 50 kids with 50 backpacks. In each of these backpacks, we're going to put supplies, and each of them is going to cost us about $20 to put these supplies, blah, blah, blah. At that moment, this person cannot question you anymore, because they know that you already have a plan in place to steward the resources that you're asking them for. All right. So this is very important. I want you to think about that. Okay. Now, after you've done the funding streams, you've put together a very solid budget. Most people will say put your budget before you do your funding. For me, the funding thing is just to make sure that you have that list of people that you want to go after and put in a strategic plan for how you plan to pursue them, because there's no money that is guaranteed. So whether you go and put a budget before you approach them, no money is guaranteed. They don't have money waiting for you. But it's how you are strategic about the way you go after them. Then the last part I want you to think about when you're thinking of growing is how you're telling your story. I know so many good nonprofits. Well, can I say good nonprofit? I know some very effective nonprofits that are doing extremely good work, but nobody knows about it. Like the few of us that know, we're like, dude, how are you guys able to do this? Like you're doing such incredible work, you're impacting so many people, yet nobody knows because you're not telling your story. You need to be telling your story. You need to be telling people about your accomplishments. You have to be doing that. You need to be telling people about the things that you have accomplished. You need to be letting them know the lives you have impacted. You need to tell them in numbers. You need to use numbers. For anyone who's ever come for us to do their taxes, especially the 990 easy, they know I'm obsessed with that. We need to be able to tell people things in numbers because people have to see the impact that you're making. It's not enough to just say we fed the homeless. Okay, give us something. How many? What did it cost you? Right? In how many neighborhoods did you go to feed the homeless? Those kind of things that when somebody looks at it, they're more than excited to want to support your mission. You have to do that. All right. Now, did I say I was breaking in this into two? It's actually four parts. So the first one was your funding. The second one was your detailed budget. The third one is in how you tell your story. And then the last one comes into your accountability. Let me tell you something. You cannot grow unless you can faithfully account for every dollar. All right. Accounting, bookkeeping, those are key to your success when you're growing a nonprofit organization. Please never take it for granted. Tracking every donation, don't take it for granted. Look, if somebody gives you $50, have a way that you can confirm to them that you appreciate the $50 they gave you. Now, the IRS has a threshold where you need to be able to give documentation, okay? But you want people to know that you're very up to speed and up to date with keeping track of all your records. It makes people trust you more. If somebody gave you $100 and you send them an email or something to confirm that we receive your $100 and thank you for the lives you're going to impact, it's going to go towards X, Y, and Z, that person will be more willing to give more to you. Okay. You want to make sure that there's a bookkeeping going on all the time, that you're constantly reconciling your books, making sure that your numbers tie. And a big part of it is making sure that your board of directors are aware of what is happening. Now, one of the ways that the public gets to see how you're stewarding resources is with your tax return. Okay. So if you've been playing with your taxes, this is where I want you to hit your head to wake up, because your tax return is your number one funding tool. For any organization that's trying to grow, please stop filing the 990N. That's not going to help you. Okay, according to the IRS, there are three types of tax return you can file when you're a 501c3 organization. Okay, there are other 501cs, by the way, but for the purposes of today, we're talking about 501c3s. So if you make less than $50,000, the IRS wants you to file a 990N. It's called a postcard. The only thing you put on there is your name, your address, your organization's name, address, mailing address, basic. It's just a compliance paperwork. Does it work? Absolutely. Because the IRS requires you to be compliant to file your taxes every year. It works. But is that where you should be? No. Why is that? Even if you didn't get up to $50,000, in fact, in my opinion, if you got $5,000 or $10,000, which came as a result of you doing the work you said you were doing, please file a 990 easy. This is why. When you file a 990 easy, which is the second tax return, Lily, you get so excited there. You don't even consider, well, the 990 easy is the second tax return. This is for organizations that make over $50,000 but less than $200,000. Okay. Now, you may not meet the income threshold, but I still encourage you to file it. Why? Because the 990 easy allows you to talk about your accomplishments, which means you can break down to the public who you were able to serve, what it cost you to serve them, the difference that you made. Because when somebody goes and pulls your tax return, you want them to be able to tell that you have been able to steward the resources that you had efficiently, and that way they can trust you with more. There's no other documentation that they can rely on. People can falsify financial statements. People do that all the time. But your tax record is one of the things that they can rely upon. Okay. And so you want to make sure that you're filing a return that allows you to tell your story in detail, tell people of your accomplishments in detail, even if you use your own part of your money, whether you did it as a loan to the organization or as a donation, but that came in addition to what other people supported you with for you to pursue your mission. Let the public know. Let the public know what you have accomplished. Because when you go and you're seeking for funds, whether you're applying for grants or you're seeking from individual donors or corporations, your tax return can become an incredible funding tool. So please do not play with that. Then the last return is what we call your 990, which is a full 990 organizations that make over that threshold, over the 200,000 and up, right? Now, for the 990, even if you made 100,000, 100,000, or if you got a grant, in my opinion, if you got a grant of 50,000 or 100, you should file the 990. Why? The 990 is a more detailed tax return. Well, the 990 is still good, but the 990 is so detailed. You know where it takes you, the next step is that it really allows you to also showcase your governance, your board of directors, if you were paying them, how many hours they put in. There's a lot more detail that goes into the 990. But because sometimes it can be more time consuming and it's more expensive to file, I understand if organizations want to save funding and not pursue that. But I just want to put that in there at the back of your mind, that your 990 return can be an incredible funding tool. So whether you're doing the 990 easy or the 990, I just want you to make sure that you avoid the 990N, which is extremely basic. Okay, so this is what I have for the grow. And the last part now is when it comes to sustaining your organization. You know, most non-profit organizations are usually between the launch and the grow because they are constantly looking for money. But once you have come out of that phase where you're no longer struggling, that means you have funding sources that work, which means you have secured grants, especially grants that will last you for several years. At that point, I really want you to prioritize leadership. All right, this is where I'm going to close out. This becomes very crucial for, yes, you could still be a part of your board, but it's good for you now to be able to step away. All right, this is where you step aside and you pick people that are going to come in with their expertise to add value to what you've already been building. Because if you're building something that is going to outlive you, it doesn't only have to be on you, right? And when you bring others, you're going to realize there are people who are so knowledgeable. The kind of incredible work that they will do will make you know that you did, in fact, leave a lasting legacy. All right. So, what are some things that I want you to have that will help you sustain your organization? First, you want to now make a big change. Want to bring in board members that will challenge you, board members that will hold the organization accountable, and you, board members that will challenge the numbers, board members that will ensure that every dollar is spent on the mission. That's the first thing. So you want that kind of board that is solid, and board members too that would be able to seek ways to help fund the organization. Because board members are not just enough to come and sit and be cute, but also to make sure that they're helping to fund the organization and push the mission. That will be real ambassadors for your organization. And then of course, making sure that you're staying compliant with all your filings. But at this point in time, in my opinion, for an organization that wants to sustain itself, prioritize mentoring other organizations. It takes you to a whole different level and positions you into a place where you're going to be in this game for so long beyond you, the founder. All right. So I hope this helped. Remember, we're talking today about what it takes to launch, to grow, and sustain an organization. When it comes to sustenance is beyond money. Sustenance is all about leadership, having the right leadership, having the right people. Okay. So when you're thinking about launching, first thing, make sure that the nonprofit is right for you, that setting up this organization is aligned with the problem you want to solve, and that you have what it takes. I gave 10 questions for you to ask, and I'm still going to provide them in as a summary. The next thing I want you to do when you move, when you're finally launched and you've set up your organization with everything we talked about, which is registering at the state level, getting your EIN, getting your determination letter from the IRS to actually be treated as a tax exempt organization, setting up your bank account, apply for charitable solicitation and state exemptions. Once you've done all of that and you start to run, the next part will be to grow. And how do you grow? You grow by making sure that you can clearly identify your funding streams or funding sources and put a strategic plan on how you will pursue them. You want to make sure that you have a very detailed and solid budget, that when someone approaches you, they know exactly where the money they give you is going to go, right? You want to also make sure that you have all your accurate records to ensure that your stuff is on top. And then, of course, you're compliant, you're filing your taxes, because your taxes become a solid funding source for you. And then finally, once you've escaped the rat race and you're in a place where you're good, you have your funding, you have your grants, you want to bring on leadership that will help to take this organization higher and higher and sustain what you build. Okay. So I think I did good on time. Any questions? All right. Let me see. You guys know I use the streaming platform that my team puts together. So I normally cannot see who is on social media until I'm done. But thank you guys. Oh my God, thank you guys. Thank you, Ronald. Yes, just got in. How do we qualify? Okay, which IRS status exempt fits us best, and how do we qualify? Oh, that's a good question. It depends on your mission, and it's very important. I didn't say this. I just mentioned that I was focusing on 501c3 organizations because these are generally public organizations, right? They are set up to serve a public good, but they can also be private foundations where you set up an organization to use your own money to give to public charities. Now, there are other setups where you can have a 501c4, a 501c5, 6, all of those depending on what you're setting up for. So if you're setting up like a civic league to focus on a particular group of people, then in that case, you'll likely be a 501c4. The only thing with the different designation is, even though your 501c, which is a designation from the IRS that makes you tax exempt, by you not being a 501c3, which means you're a 4, a 5, or whatever, your donors may not be able to write off their donations to your organization. So the different entity types determines how the donor's donations will be treated. But as far as you being tax exempt, so long as you're a 501c, that's the IRS code that handles exemption. But then, depending now on whether you want to be a charitable organization, a religious organization, or you want to just serve a civic league or a particular group of people, then you might have a different number, whether it's a 3, a 4, it's a 5, an 8, and all of those, which will impact how your donors treat their donations given to you. That was a really good question, Stacy. I see someone here, Chenuna Masha. I have a situation. I do offer free 15 minutes consult, so please take advantage of that, Masha. I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you, guys. I think I want to make sure that I didn't miss anybody, but yes. So I think we should be good there. Yes. So thank you guys so much for being on. Remember, I offer complimentary 15-minute sessions. If you have any questions, please, take advantage of it. I'm happy. You don't have to be a client to use it. I know I might be booked out till next week, but after that I am it's open. Please hop on, take advantage, pick on my brain, ask me questions that you don't want to ask in public. I'm more than happy to answer. Okay, I hope that you guys did enjoy this summer series. I have enjoyed this thoroughly, like all the way. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to share my little knowledge with you for your businesses, your tax strategies, your nonprofits. Last week we talked on trust, and I was just impressed by how much people just wanted, or how much more they wanted. So we're going to do a completely different series on trust later on, because we saw that there was a huge interest in that. So we'll be back with that. But thank you all so much. Remember, if you have a group or you're part of a group that needs someone to come and talk about tax strategies, or just how to even bring your kids into your business and things like that, or how for couples wanting to go into business, real estate agents, nonprofits, people thinking about starting nonprofits, even churches. I'm more than happy to come and have a conversation with you guys and answer all of your burning questions. Okay. It's been so nice hanging out. I hope you all stay safe. This is it. The last session for the summer series. Thank you all so much. Bye bye.